Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this Mastermind webinar with our special guest, Jason Rainbird, who's going to talk us through the 5 key building blocks of online lead generation. So it should be a very exciting meeting. Let's see if Jason is available now to talk. Hello, Jason.
Hello, Rob. I am
Hi.
here.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yes, I might
Good.
turn myself down a bit, but
No,
right.
so all sounds great
Can
to
you
me.
hear me
So
okay?
yeah, so I'll hand straight over to you. But perhaps Jason, for those who don't know you, you could tell us a bit about yourself and your company.
Okay. Well, my name is Jason Rainbird, as you know. I live in Ashford in Kent. I run a company called Flowbird Limited. We are what's called inbound marketing specialists, which basically means that we help people generate more inquiries from their online marketing, from their websites. We do this in a very, very particular way, and obviously some of the things we're going to talk about today are going to cover those areas. Okay.
Brilliant. Okay, and hopefully at the end of the session we'll have a chance, if anyone's got any burning questions, you will be able to ask them to Jason. Just pop your question in the chat box, and Jason will try and get to you time permitting. So Jason, over to you.
All right. So hopefully everyone can see the screen, and what you should see is obviously the introduction screen. So as we go through, right. Right. If you haven't already done this, what we ask is that you either follow the top link or the bottom link. What we're going to get each person to do is actually to do an evaluation on their own site, and then as we go through this report, you can actually look at your own system, you can look at your own comments, and you can work out for yourself what it is that you need to do. So you've got the top one. I've cut it down to a smaller one, which is the tinyurl.com /Flowbird, and that should take you to the form. And if I show you the form itself, we come up here, this is what you should end up looking like. Fill in the details. Very, very important when you fill in this website section that you don't put in the HTTP :// and then the report will work correctly for you. That should take a few minutes. While that's actually happening, what we're going to do is we're going to jump in and we're going to look at the 5 building blocks. Now we've run the report on an existing site, which is actually Rob's site, and here hopefully you can all see what the final report will look like for you. What we're going to do is we're going to go down through each section of these, and we're going to look at the 5 different stages of the 5 building blocks and the benefits that it will bring to your business and the things that you maybe need to do. The really good thing about this report, as you'll see in a second, is there's lots of help and information to enable you to get more information as you do. So where you see these read more, you'll click in, it will tell you exactly what you need to do. I'm also going to talk to you about why you should be doing this, and some of the benefits and some of the impacts that you'll see as a result of doing some of these elements, and so we'll go through these as individual parts. Okay. What I've also got for you, I've cut this report down, but you don't need to make notes from any of the reporting, but what we're going to see is this report, and what we're going to do is I'll send you this report at the end of the document so that you can see the full report, and you can work your way through the different sort of information that you need. So hopefully you can all see that as part of the process. So just to see how you're going, right, let's go through. Okay. All right, so what you see is you see the 5 building blocks, and what we've got here is we've got blogging, social media, SEO, which stands for search engine optimization, lead generation, and mobile. And what we're going to see is we're going to break this down as individuals, and we're going to talk about why there is. So the first one we're going to look at, we've got an overall score, which we can see for this site is 39%, and then obviously we've got whether the social media links are in. Now sometimes when the report runs, the system can't always gather where your social media links in because you've done it a particular way. So what you can actually do here, you can click on the little link and you can come in and you can put the information directly into here, and then it will rerun the report for you and give you a better score. So for example, if it can't work out because you've called it your journal or you called it news or something like that, it can't work out exactly what you're calling your blog, then come in here as as part of that process, and we'll recalculate that for you. Likewise, if you have what's called an RSS feed, which basically is a system, if any of you aren't aware, is a system that will feed information to your interested audience automatically. So they can register with your RSS feed, and then as soon as you make a change on your website, on your blog, it's immediately fed to them through what's called an RSS reader. All right, so part of that process. Okay, so let's click OK and save that. Okay. So let's look at blogging first. I want to look at blogging for a lot of people, and the reason why. So if we click back down to my report, we're going to look at the contact impact, and then we're going to look through at some of the impacts that you can get as a result of this. So this is what we see here, is what you see along the bottom is you see a number of website pages, and you see what we call the traffic index. Now the traffic index, let's jump down up a bit. The traffic index is the number of inquiries you're currently having, the number of visitors you're having, and what sort of increase you're likely to receive as a result of the number of pages that you increase on your website. The reason that we talk about blogging as we'll go through is because blogging is a way in which you can actually add content to your site very easily and very quickly, and you can increase the number of pages. And as you can see here, we can go through, we can start to see the increase in traffic. There is a magic number which we'll see at blogging, and I'll actually show you what that is later as we go through. Okay.
Can I, Jason, just ask a quick question while we're on blogging, because
yep.
obviously my website here not very good on this part of things, which I am aware of, but the problem I find with this particular site is the content, trying to get the content right, or being creative, trying to come up with the information. Do you have any advice on that? Or I mean, some of the things we do or have tried in the past is sort of perhaps looking at industry news and rewriting that, or that kind of thing. What sort of thing would you suggest?
When I sit down with clients and we think about blogging, obviously you think about the things like the keywords and things like that, but what I actually say to them is use the blogging as a way to answer questions. So whenever you get a question into your office and someone says, can I do this, can I do that, if one person's asking that question, then there are lots of people out there asking the same question, and that's where blogging is really, really powerful. Sit down and say, right, let's say for obviously the estate agent business, can I rent more than 2 properties without paying some tax, whatever, I don't know what sort of questions you would receive. But if then sit down and write that as a blog. So you say, this is the question, this is why the customer or the potential customers asked the question, and this is the answer.
Yeah.
And the reason that benefits is because then people will start to search for those phrases. They'll go to Google, they'll type that question in, and if your blog is answering that question, then there's a good chance that they'll find your blog. Google will index you, or the search engines will index you, and they will find your blog. And that's really why it's so powerful. I also talk to people about blogging about particular cases where maybe they're working with a particular client. Obviously, you don't mention any names, but you can talk about their industry, you can talk about the situation, and you can talk about the outcome of that result.
Okay.
The general rule of thumb for blogging is 80% content or educational, 20% sales. The thing with blogging is not to be selling. That's really, really, really important aspect of what you do. So you talk about, the situation, you talk about the solution, you talk about how the solution was solved, and then right at the bottom, you talk maybe a little bit about what you do and how you solve these problems for people. All right, and that's part of it. All right.
That makes sense.
I had a situation with a plumber. I don't know what to blog about. I said, well, where did you go yesterday? He said, well, we went to see this customer that had a problem with this particular boiler. We had to get these parts for it. We then fitted the parts. We then did some tests. I said, there's your blog. Instantly there is a blog. If you don't like writing, then we'll talk about blogging as well. Then what you can do is you can dictate your blog. And then there are services online where you can email that dictation, that recording, and they will transcribe that back for you, and then obviously you can just upload that onto your blogging platform. All right?
Okay, yeah, brilliant.
So Right, so let's click on and have a look at this side of it. So why is blogging important? Um, Blogging is important, as I say, for two reasons. A, because it increases the number of pages that you have on your site. A lot of people will have static pages. They'll have like the services, they'll have about us, they'll have the key bits of information about their company, they'll have the pricing structure, but what they don't have is that regular, fresh content. The nice thing with blogging as part of that process is because you can, as I said before, you can start to create content, and you don't have to worry about it being time sensitive. You know, you can create a blog today that's relevant for today's market, and you can write about it. And because it's date stamped, people know that, you know, in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever number of years to come, it was relevant at the time. So you don't have to be taking that blog down. You can still be reusing that content. It's still relevant at the point. And that's why blogging is so powerful, because that's what you can go through. All right. If we click back to here, to our PDF. Okay. Da, 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 da. Okay. So you can see now, as you start to create content. Now you don't have to obviously go out and start to create this content straight away. As you start to build up your years of blogging, you'll see that the number of increases in inquiries can grow, you know, as part of that process. Okay, so let's go right. Okay. Now, what we also have available, what's also important for you is don't create a blog that is somewhere else, not relevant to your site. It has to be either what we call a subdomain, which is something like, if we click up here back onto Flowbird's site, you can see we've got this info, which is what's called a subdomain of the primary domain. It's very, very important to make sure that the blog itself is linked to your domain, because the juices, sort of the SEO and the search engine optimization, are all relevant because they're all linking back to the same place. It's an important aspect of what you do. There are sites out there, like you can go to WordPress and you can create WordPress bloggers or blogging sites, but if they're not on your domain, they're not having an impact on you. You might get links back to your domain, but you need it to actually be physically with you. That's an important aspect of what you're doing. Okay. The other thing with blogging that's an important aspect, and we'll come on to this, is social, is the social media element. So every time you create a blog, then it's an important aspect to push that blog out to your social media. So if you've got Twitter and you've got LinkedIn, or you've got Facebook, depending on your market, then every time you create the blog on your site, and then copy the links from the top of the page onto the social media sites, so that people are able obviously to see it, but they're also able to click back onto the main site to start to read information. Obviously then you're drawing in the traffic. That's an important element as well. It's also important with your blog to make sure that you have it very, very visible on your home page. You know, it needs to be relevant information, it needs to be up there, but you need to be showing it very, very, very early on, and people's looking at your main page so they can see what's going on. Another aspect as well, as you can see here, is subscription. As part of that process, it's important because every time you do a blog, you want to try and encourage people to subscribe to your blog, so that they immediately get an update. A new blog's arrived. Part of the process we go through is we give prospects or customers the ability to choose how often they want to be updated. So for example, do they want to be updated instantly? Do they want to update daily, weekly, monthly? And what we will do is, you know, we'll create a series of blogs, and then if they've chosen monthly, at the end of the month or the beginning of the next month, they'll get one email with, say, the 4 or 5, 6, 7 blogs that have been created that month, and then they can scroll through and choose the ones that are of interest to them. And that way they can start to interact, and they can start to share that information out as part of that process. You're building your audience as the way you go. All right.
Okay.
Good. All right. You do that. Let's go back. Okay. So, is there any questions specifically on blogging that you want me to cover?
Okay. I can't see any questions come through, but that's certainly given me some food for thought.
Okay. with this report, I say, when you get this report, don't forget that what you have here is you have lots of information that you can download. So on the report itself, you can click here. It will tell you everything you need to know to get your business up and running, to get the bloggings going, to what you need to do as part of that process. All right. Okay. Let's go to. I want to go to lead generation next for a particular reason. Okay. Now, lead generation is part of that process on your website where you are now starting to interact with people and you're starting to capture leads and inquiries. This is a lead generation tool for you. If you have a website, if you go to your website now and you look at every single page and you say, is there something on there? Is there something that we call it a call to action, or is there a form? Is there something that is encouraging that person to take action? I don't want them just reading the information and moving on. What am I doing for my website to make it a sales tool for me? What am I doing to move them through the process? Okay, it's an important part of it. So you need to be thinking, right, call to actions, forms. The other thing with lead generation, which is also important, is to think about the process in the sales cycle they are. Now, if that person is just they're just inquiring about what it is that you do, or they're just thinking about, they have a particular problem, they don't know if there is a solution to it, then think about that person is not necessarily going to want to pick the phone up and get in contact. They just want information, but you want them to have your information. In order to do that on your website, you need to be thinking about, what can I give this? So we suggest usually that people have things like hints and tips, top 10 tips about this particular subject. And what you're then able to do is you're able to then offer that information to them. They click on a button, they give you their email address, you've then got a lead, but likewise they've got the information they want. Hopefully they'll share that information and that will bring you more people, but it means that you can continue to market to that person. So when you have another piece of content or another piece of information that's relevant, you can send a follow-up email as part of that process out to them and say, you inquired about this, hope you found it of interest, you might be interested in this. And what you're doing is you're developing that relationship, developing the knowledge, and you're proving from their perspective, from their prospect's perspective, that you know what you're talking about and that you are the person that can help them. So look at every page, look at the elements of the page, look at whether you've got call to actions, buttons and forms on every single page. Every single page is a sales tool, is working for you. You need to make it work for you, so it's an important part. And with the reporting that I'll show you, say at the end, you'll see the increase in inquiries that you get a result of that. Don't just rely on, phone us for a quote, or have a meeting. Whoa, it's far too early in the sales cycle for most people. It's an important part to pull that back. All right. So if there's any questions on that, shout away. But otherwise, I will crack on. Okay. Let's look at social media. Okay. These are directly now. This particular report's obviously showing the tweets that's coming back from the good estate agent. But why is it so important to be on social media? The obvious things is that theoretically that's where your customers are. So for example, if you are a business-to-business salesperson, business-to-business company, then generally you would go for something like LinkedIn, but look at the groups and go onto LinkedIn and join the groups, post the articles and the blogs that you've created onto those groups, but don't go for the ones that are your industry specialists. If I'm a plumber and I join a group of plumbers, my chances of getting business is actually quite small. But if I join a group that's called, leaky radiator, then it's a slightly strange one, but I know, but then that's where my customers are going to be. So think about when you're joining your LinkedIn groups where your market is, who you're actually targeting. If you're an estate agent, as an example, you might go for, house owners group or something where it's relevant to you as part of that process. But the thing with it is to be interactive, is to start to share the content. Now the three major social platforms, obviously we've got Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter, and you need to use them in different ways. Facebook is very much the personality of the company. It's not too salesy, it's information, it's general bits and pieces about what you do, but it's not business in that sense. LinkedIn obviously is very much the business. You're helping people, you're talking to business people, and I say, get the content out there, start discussions, get involved. I suggest, and it's sort of an industry thing, that you spend roughly half an hour per day working on your social media. Don't get engrossed in it, unless obviously that's your business, but generally half an hour a day, create a couple of tweets during the day, post something on Facebook and post something on LinkedIn, and you'll start to see an increase in traffic. All of that is drawing them back.
Yeah, I think with sorry to cut in there. I think
yeah.
looking at my tweets here and things we've done, we've been trying to get it right on social media, and we found we did have a feed which was feeding out our property updates into the social networks, and that was actually a real bad thing for us to do, because it was really just trying to sell the properties.
Yes.
Just recently, we started posting things like we go out to a restaurant, we'll take photos of the food, and we'll say where the restaurant is, and we'll do a food review, which has nothing to do with property, but it is to do with the local area. And I had an email from Facebook saying that the last post has performed 75% better than anything you ever done before.
Yes.
So again, it's just finding the things that are of interest to your customers that perhaps have a slight link, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's, as I say, for me, it's still a learning curve, trying different things and seeing what works. But we certainly lost followers by tweeting properties every day.
It's you're exactly right, because what you're basically doing is you're selling, and without being funny, nobody is interested in what you do. Nobody's interested in what you do. They're interested in themselves. They're interested in what they want, and so you've got to reverse that, and you've got to be more educational. People need to realize that they need to share their knowledge, their education. They need to prove that they know, and they need to be out there on social media offering help. That's what it's all about. You've got a particular situation, you know how to solve a particular problem, talk about that. And that's why we have this 80-20 ruling with the blogging, and it's the same thing with the social media. Try and keep the salesy bit to a minimum, and try and keep the information flow. If you're out there helping and people are reading and seeing, that's when they'll start to bite, because if they're interested in that subject, that's when they'll start to say, yeah, okay, this is good, we need more of this. So that's part of the process. So yeah, small and regular is obviously the best thing to do. As I say, half an hour per day. Just get in the morning. Sit down there with your cup of tea and your cup of coffee. Have a read. Comment on some. If you're on LinkedIn, comment on some groups. Get involved in some activities. Update something. It's all part of that process of just being seen. Don't, if you put something just on your own website, without being funny, unless you've got a massive website that's with a lot of traffic, then it's going to get picked up eventually. So that's why you use the social media, obviously, to push your links out and get this back to your thing. The one thing I was going to say as well is, obviously, you could dump all of your content directly onto it. So if you create a blog article, you could dump that directly onto a LinkedIn, or you could direct that directly onto, say, Facebook. And I advise very strongly against that. What I say to people is that Facebook in particular have a habit of just closing pages down if they don't like them. And if you've created a lot of content, that's now lost. Create it on your own blog, on your own website, and just share the links over. And then that way you've got that link back to your own site, which is primarily what you're trying to do. You're trying to get people to your website, and then obviously get them to take action. Okay, all right.
Brilliant.
So let's click on to the next stage. We'll click on SEO. SEO, just in case anyone doesn't know, stands for search engine optimization, and it's basically the process that you go through with your website to make sure that it's optimized so that search engines can index it correctly. I'm going to go through a couple of things that people sometimes do wrong, and these are things that you can rectify. The first thing is that the search engines index every single page individually. All right, so every single page stands on its own merits. So what we suggest that you do is that you make each page specific to one key phrase or one key keyword, and you make sure that you go through that. So you go through, some of this is fairly technical, but you go through, make sure that the title, that some of the content in it is all focusing on one word. If you've got pages that cover, say, 2 or 3 subjects, then what I suggest you do is you split them into those 2 or 3 subjects, and then you go back and say, right, this page is about this subject A, subject B, and subject C, and then there are certain things that you can do to improve the performance of that. The title is probably the most important currently. Obviously, with the way that Google goes, it could change any time, but the title of the page is what you see along the top. So for example, along here, if we click back here, I've got marketing evaluation as the primary focus of the thing, and you can see here that marketing evaluation appears in different elements throughout the site, and that's part of that process. That's the phrase that this page is in particular is targeting. All right. Okay, it's an important thing. You've also got this. You can see here we've got what's called alt tags. Now, alt tags are images, and behind the image you can create a piece of text. Now, originally it was created in the good old days. It's not that long ago. You know, you would load a web page, and the images would take a little bit of time to download, and so you'd have this sort of blank box. And so what you created the alt tag for was so that there was a bit of text underneath that to tell you what the picture was going to be. And so the idea behind that is that, you know, you could say, oh, here it comes, it's on its way, here it is, and this is what it's about. But the alt tag now, because we have faster internet connections generally, the alt tag now is now used to actually describe the picture, because Google can't read pictures. Therefore, you're telling the text that this picture is about this subject, but make it relevant to obviously what the page is about. The subject matter of the page is an important part of you. Okay. SEO, obviously we've got linking as well. This is where pages externally link back to your site. One of the things that's important to do with this is to make sure that you're linking to sites that are relevant and important to you. You know, you can go out today and you can sign up for, you know, we'll create 10,000 links for you over the next 3 weeks. It's actually very, very damaging to your business. Google is looking for, the search engines are looking for what they call good links, relevant links. So if you're going to link to someone, Rob, you mentioned the restaurant. You know, if the restaurant created a link from their site to yours, you know, there is a link. You know, they're in property. It's a business. It's a building. There's a reason for the link. They could create that link, and that would probably be okay. But you know, if suddenly you're going to link to a fish farmer in, you know, Uzbekistan, then Google might look at that and think, seriously, that's a bit dodgy, so don't do it. It's not worth it. All right. Okay. Another important thing is using your company name in your title. Don't do it. If you look at your page, and if every single page has your company name in at the top, then you need to remove that, apart from the home page, which is fine, but every other page should have that removed. It shouldn't be part of the thing. Go back to the original subject, pick the subject, put that in, and they'll be part of the details. A couple of other things as well is here we've got use unique page descriptions. So make sure that every single page has a description and has a unique description. Some standard systems will generate the same page name for every single page. It's a waste of time. Strip them all out, think about what the page is about, and write a description that's relevant for that page. There's some little bit of key stats for you as well. For the page title, up here, this bit here, make sure that's no longer than 70 characters. All right, as part of that process, because in the search engine, that will get cut off, all right, and you'll lose the meaning at the end. Likewise, make sure that the description is no greater than 150 characters. Okay, once again, the little blurb that you see on the search engines will get cut off. The other thing with the page description is if you go to Google and you search, the little bit of text that you see underneath the title comes from your page description. If you've not put anything in your page description, Google will grab something from your website to fill that box in, and that could be anything. That is, I always say to people, that's your little sales tool. You're selling that page. Someone has Googled you, you've turned up on the search engines, and they're now looking through, and that little bit of text, that 150 characters, is now, please come to see my page, this is where I am. And you need to tell them and think about what they've searched for, because once again, you know, it's all relevant. So think about the keywords that they probably searched for because of the page title and what the subject is about, and make sure that that is in that description. This page is about this subject, you know, you don't say it, but this is a good chance you've probably searched for this, so this is a good page to come to. All right, so it's quite an important element of that. Okay, SEO is a massive element to it. There is two elements to SEO. There is what we call on-page SEO, which you very much have control of, which is your website, and there's off-page, which is basically everyone else and what they're doing and they're linking to you. All right, so there's quite a few reports on here that will give you some helps and tips for you to download if you want to have a look at that. Okay, all right.
Okay.
Okay, mobile. Why is mobile important? It's estimated that 55% of people now accessing the internet today are using a mobile device. Okay, and what does a mobile device, what does a mobile website look like? Well, basically, if you go to a mobile page, what will happen is the page will shrink and the content will stay. I don't know whether this will work. At the moment, with the page here, you see obviously the full page. If I now shrink this down, what you'll see is that the page will actually continue to shrink down, but we don't lose the actual content or the site. All right? It's an important element because if I was now looking at this on my mobile phone, what I don't want is I don't want a shrink down version. Let's see if we can show you what I mean. If I shrink the page, yeah, what I don't want to see on my mobile device is this, because obviously it's not readable, and that's the difference between the system. I've shrunk that down. So if your website, if you go to your website today and you look at it on your phone and it looks like something where the font is so small that you need super reading glasses to read it, then it's not relevant. It needs to be changed. The technical term is responsive. It responds to whatever platform is looking at. So if it's a larger screen, it will grow. Go on.
That's the great thing I find about WordPress. I'm a big fan of WordPress, and pretty much all WordPress sites now, if you've got the latest version, are responsive, aren't they, by default?
Yeah.
You might have to tweak it a bit, but if you're looking to for a good way to update your website that's got those things built in, then certainly it's what I use. So.
And it makes a difference. If you're walking along and suddenly you're looking at a page and it's not responsive, you will disappear. I have heard rumours. I mean, obviously I'm not in touch with Google directly, and I'm sure they're not going to tell me, but I have heard rumours that Google will penalise you if your website is not responsive, because they know that obviously they're delivering a service. If they deliver a responsive website to somebody, then that's a better appeal than the website that's not responsive. So it's an important part. And as I say, the number of people using mobile devices today is growing. So we are in a situation where we're starting to see an increase, in responsive, in search and everything else with mobile. So it's a very, very important aspect of it. The reason I've kind of left it last, because it is the most technical element. Generally, unless you're going to have a website, if you've got a website designer, you need to be going back to them saying, is my website responsive? If not, what can you do about it? Because it does take some technical things to do behind the scenes. It's not something you can generally do yourself. All right? Okay. Right, so we've gone through the 5 building blocks. I want to prove to you, in a sense now, with this report as to why it's important and what you should see as an increase. So we talked about generally about web pages, and we talked about the content of that. So if we go through landing pages, as we talked about, are these pages where, with a landing page, you've created a piece of content, right? Hints and tips on a particular subject. And what you've done is you've created this landing page which strips away everything else. If we come back to the website I showed you before, the marketing evaluation, this is a normal landing page, and I'll tell you some few things about this. You notice there's no navigation, okay? It's all stripped out, because what we're doing is we are saying to the person, look at this site, you've landed on this site, we want you to take action. We don't want you to be distracted and go off and do something else. I don't want my blogs or my tweets down the side. I don't want them distracted. All I'm interested at this stage is for them to fill in that form and give me their details. And so it's an important element of a landing page to make sure that we've done it in a particular way. If I can still click back on here and go back to my home page if I want to, but generally everything else is gone. It's clean, it's fresh. All it's selling at this particular stage is what the offer is. In this case, it's the marketing evaluation and the form to fill in. So look at your form pages, look at what you've got on them, and think about whether you can strip them out and whether you can cut them down and whether you can create these pages, these landing pages that will reduce the number of distractions that you've got on a particular site at any time. All right?
I think there's if you're doing things with Google as well, you have to. I think you've got to have a privacy policy, haven't you? But I think that's all you need to have. I think that they're starting to get a bit funny if you don't have that in place. But as long as it can be at the bottom of the page. It's but yeah, we've been trying to do that with various landing pages ourselves.
I think the thing is, the thing with this is that inbound marketing works on a different process. We are saying to people that we have information for you. We're like any organization. We want to sell to you, but we're not cold calling you. We're not sending you spam. We're not sending around knocking on doors, etc. We're waiting for you. We've put this information on the internet, but as a result of that, we want to share information. Now, if this was something very simple, you might reduce the number of form fields. The biggest thing that people can sometimes do is asking too many questions at the beginning. Start off with just a name and an email address gets you going. As you then start to talk to people, then you can start to ask more information about what they're doing and where they're at. There is a recommendation of never having more than 7 fields on a form, because there's a drop-off point after that. They've done stats on the drop-off point. Up to about 7 seems to be the optimum number. But you see forms with 15. Now, if you're filling in a mortgage application online, then that people will fill those number of forms in because there's enough information required. But you've got to think, what am I offering and what is someone willing to give me? And it's an important aspect of the whole landing page psychology of what you're doing. All right?
Yeah, I'm just cutting in. I've been looking at something similar on that recently. We had a valuation form which had name, address, telephone number, property, estimated valuation, and I literally cut that down to name, telephone number, and a button that says next, and that comes straight to me. But then takes them to another form if they want to give me the rest of the information. And obviously a massive increase that I don't get all the information I wanted, but I've got the main thing, a phone number and a name. So it requires the manual intervention of actually picking up the phone, but that's definitely worked for me.
I think with that as well, what I would do is I would do the email, I would do the form, and then I would do a follow-up email which said, thanks for filling in the form. Obviously, for us to give you more information, we need some additional information. Click on this link to get the more information as part of that process, and then you're sort of proactively encouraging them to give you. People aren't stupid. They know that in your particular case, if they want a mortgage evaluation, there are certain pieces of key information that they need. But likewise, you don't want to lose that inquiry for the spur of the moment. Oh, I'll just fill it in and see what happens. So it's a balancing act. Look at what we do is with clients is we look at performances of forms and we say this particular form is asking too many. We're not getting enough hits. The ratios aren't right. So what we're going to do is we're going to chop something out. With the system we use, with the HubSpot system we use, we're actually clever enough to say, well, if they've answered these 4 questions, we don't need to ask them again. What we can do is we can actually now drop in another question, and so each time there's always maybe 4 or 5 questions to ask, or 4 or 5 fields to form, but the system is just dropping them in as we go through the sales cycle with that prospect, and so we're building up a profile, as part of the process. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's look at this. Landing pages. So once again, we've got the situation. The number of landing pages you actually have has an impact as well. The more chances you've got to inquire. Now, what I say to people, if you're starting from scratch and all you've got is one form, which is usually the contact us form, that's fine. But you need to be thinking over a period of time what needs to be done and how you need to take it through the process, and then you'll see an increase in leads as part of that as we go through the adding the landing pages in, adding the offers in, and more information. Okay. Right. You can see there 55% increase, and this is the thing I always say to people when I talk to people generally. I say, well, you know, having a website with no landing pages and no call to actions is a bit like having a shop and having nothing on the windows and no encouragement to get people into the shop. You need to get people into the shop before they can take action, before they can make a purchase. So that's why there's such an increase. You know, put banners up, put things out. You can make it subtle, but as long as it's obvious, so that people know that the next stage for them is to fill in a form or to inquire about more information as part of the process. And you can see a massive increase as you start to increase the number of landing pages. And these are all things that you can do yourself. You know, if you're sitting there as a small business, you're thinking, I can't do this. This isn't a, you don't do this tomorrow. You do this over a 6-month period, and you'll see the increases happening as part of that. Okay. We talked about blogging, and once again, how many blogs do you need to produce? It's always a big question, and this gives you a rough idea. Obviously, if you're producing no blogs, then your increase in traffic as well as blog articles is going to be 0. But as you start to increase the number of monthly blogs, then you can start to see an impact in the amount of traffic you've got and the resulting leads as you've got a result of that. For most of our clients, we produce somewhere around about 4 to 5 a month as part of that, and then they will fill in with other stuff that comes in as part of that, and you can see the increase in traffic as we go over. If you're a big company with lots of content, then obviously producing 2 to 3 blogs a week is a possibility, but that's a big content machine. I would suggest for most companies, even if you're a sort of a 1-man band, 2-man band, 3-man band, 1 a week should be your absolute minimum. And if you can't think of, if you can't sit down for sort of half an hour once a week and think of something to write about, then you need to sit down, with yourself and with your team and think, what questions am I getting asked? What am I doing? What information can I share? And that's the sort of information. Be willing to give away a little bit.
You gave me a great idea earlier when you were talking about content of, what questions are our customers asking? Well, we've got our database of customers. Why not invite them, with an email or a survey to ask some questions, get them to ask the information, and then we can give the answers back to everybody on our blog. So it's just finding the way. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, for me, it's often the challenge is what do I write that's relevant and interesting, and I think that's a key thing. Write to what customers want to hear, what they're asking.
I think the other thing as well, from your perspective, is that you sit there and you think, well, that's so obvious, everyone knows that. And the reality is that no one else knows that because they're not involved in your business. They don't do what you do. They don't know what you know. And so sometimes the simplest questions can have the biggest impact. You might be sitting there thinking, well, everyone knows, how much it costs to hire a 4-bedroom house, because you deal with it every day. But the reality is that the vast majority of people don't, and so therefore that's the sort of information. Think about the very, very obvious questions. If you've got people answering the phone in the office, if someone rings up and says, starts a question with how or why or whatever, just write it down on a piece of paper. Boom, you've got a blog article. And that's all it takes. And that's part of the process of getting the content out there, sharing that information out. Okay. This is the big stat, really. 5 times more traffic for companies that have blogs. So, if you're sitting on traffic at the moment, you can literally multiply that up and up and up and up and up. 15 times per month is a lot, and it gets you to 5. But even doubling the amount of traffic you get to your website and engaging with your audience is a big part of that. All right.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Don't worry about these. I'll send these through. And then leads is the final thing. And you can see there with the stats, there's a massive jump once you get to the sort of the 9 to 15, over 9 to 15 blogs per month. But there's big increases all the way through. You can literally be multiplying it up and up and up as part of that process. So it's worth bearing in mind for what you want to do. I'm conscious of time. Obviously talk too much. So what I was going to do is actually stop now and then see whether people have any questions and then take questions for the sort of last 10 minutes
Okay.
of the session.
Well, I mean, obviously a fantastic amount of information there. So if anyone does have any specific questions, if Jason hasn't managed to cover everything there for you, then please put those through. Just while we see if there's any other questions coming through there. For the benefit of everyone listening, if they want to find out more, if they want to talk to you further on this, you know, what's next? What are the next steps for them?
If they haven't already done so, obviously fill out the evaluation, and then normally what we would do is we'd sit down and have a chat. We call it the coffee chat. It's literally a 10-minute discussion about what you're doing and what your plans are. We then have what's called a grading form. If we feel that, you know, we can go to the next stage with you, then we'll get you to fill out a form, which is an Excel spreadsheet. Ask you lots of questions about what you're doing, your marketing, and then it kind of gives you a sort of a thought process of where you want to go. We then look for the next stage of people. We look at the finances of it. So we say, right, you know, how much business are you looking to generate? How many inquiries you've got, etc., etc. And we'll actually then sit down and say, right, this is how much work it's going to take to generate that amount of business. And so people can very, very quickly work out whether sort of inbound marketing is good for them as part of that process. And the nice thing with what we do, it's very much a return on investment. You know, we'll look at what you're trying to achieve. We'll look at where you're trying to go, and you know, the way that we run our business is that every month you'll get return on investment. So you'll see the number of inquiries, the number of leads, and the amount of business that you're getting, and then we tweak it and we tweak it and we tweak it until we finalise, you know, and we start to build a lead generation machine, which is part of what we do.
Okay, sounds brilliant. Just got one question come in here from John about software. Is there any software you can recommend to sort of help with this process?
The software that I would obviously pick, if you've filled in the system and you've seen the report, is HubSpot. HubSpot is a really this is what it does. It builds that leads, it looks at the blogging, it creates the blogging platform for you, it creates the social media platform, it sorts out your forms, your lead generation. It does all the different elements of your business that you need, and it does it all in one package as well. So you can have your whole website on there if you want to, or you can run a WordPress website or another website and integrate it. But it will handle everything. And the nice thing with it, as I said at the end of what I was saying, is that the return on investment. It will show you very clearly, you know, what you're doing, where you're going wrong, what you need to change, where your performances are. If you don't want to go down the whole HubSpot route, then there's other systems. There's obviously things like Hootsuite, which is a social media type platform. WordPress itself, if you're into WordPress, has a number of really good plugins. So you've got some of the SEO plugins that will help you, and obviously WordPress by definition is very much a blogging platform, so it will handle all the blogging and interaction.
Does something like HubSpot itself integrate with WordPress?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
yeah, both ways. So you can either, you know, I've got clients who have got WordPress where we sort of integrate HubSpot with it. So all the forms that you see within the WordPress system are going to the HubSpot system, and all the management of that is. But they're actually doing the design and the website within WordPress. Likewise, I've got clients who are totally on HubSpot, so the whole website is managed, hosted by HubSpot as part of that process. So it can be a mixture.
Okay, brilliant.
It depends which elements you want to deal, because obviously there's more traffic, there's more leads, and there's more customers. So you look at which element you want to increase. So, you know, if it's more traffic, you do this. If it's more leads, you do this. And if it's more customers, or you want to keep your customers for longer, customer retention, then there's different tools that are better for all of those. So.
Okay, brilliant. Well, I think that's all the questions that are coming through now. So just leaves me to say thank you, Jason, for joining us today. I've certainly learnt a lot, and you sold me. I think I'm going to be talking to you further about some of these items. Now you've analysed my my site in public, so better get onto some of those bits.
Yeah.
So thank you, Jason. We will send a recording of this presentation out to everyone here. But thanks, and we'll look forward to speaking to you next time.